We're back. Ladies and gentlemen, we discussed earlier that you have the ability to show your solidarity with federal workers and with just the whole idea of being efficient by emailing. What's the address again? OPM?
hr@opm.gov.
hr@opm.gov. hr@opm.gov. And showing that you want to get with the program too and tell them what you've been doing at work for the past 5 days to justify your job. I would recommend being as detailed as possible because you never know what part of your day is the one that's really going to speak to your bosses as to showing how much you deserve your job. Like, I know when I come in and I see like, oh, Emma's moved back the tissue box towards me. I go, I really appreciate her here. And I don't know if off the top of my head, if I was making a list of all the things I do at work, like, if she would write that. So that's what I would do. Make it as long as possible. And if you don't want to write it yourself, go to ChatGPT or whatever your favorite AI is and ask it to write for your job. The other thing you can do is something like this. At HUD, where I think they're starting to lay off people willy-nilly, there's no rhyme or reason to this whatsoever. Efficiency is really about looking at an agency or a company or an enterprise and saying, what are the vital things and what are the things that are not so vital? And really assessing that and analyzing it and then saying, we don't need these non-vital things. Now, of course, that's not what Dodgy, whatever it is doing. They're just trying to destroy agencies, period, by wreaking as much havoc as possible and chaos.
Kind of like how private equity wasn't trying to make Toys R Us more efficient.
Yes, this is just extracting value out of it. And, a lot of this is just BS, too. Let's just be clear. They're taking out agencies that they want, that they want to avoid these agencies inhibiting profit for their ventures and other of their friends' ventures, essentially. Now, some resourceful person at HUD, apparently they have a video communication system in HUD where they have TVs there, and some resourceful person, and this type of person, this is what you're looking for. You're looking for somebody who is an out-of-the-box thinker, who is a communicator, who maybe has some technical skills, and who's going to break things and take names and disrupt things. This is the kind of worker. And I think, to that extent, kudos for Elon and Trump for, getting folks like this to really show their value. This must be, I'll tell you what I would do if I was writing hr@opm.gov to tell why I deserve a job, my job. This would be first on my list. Look at what someone has posted. Long live the real king. And it's, Donald Trump rubbing,
massaging and sucking Elon's toes in the Oval Office.
It's honestly, that's very well done. It's creative. It's thoughtful. There's a couple more. Here we go. We got a lot of videos of it.
Jeff Stein here. You can see it, how it's on both the TV in the foreground and the TV in the background.
I mean, it's just very well done. It's very well done. Now, I'll have to say, too, keep it up there, because I think one of the things that is I like about this is that it's understated. Yeah. a lot of people will be like, I'm so proud of myself for making this video. I want everybody to see it, but they put the chyron over it as a way of saying, like, I'm confident in my product. Like, I don't need to shove it in your face. This is the kind of
Like a
worker
pair of
I would
Elon
want.
feet.
This is the kind of person who needs a promotion. That's all I'm saying.
It seems like the meritocracy is working well.
Yep. Philly cheesesteak. In my email to OPM subject line, what I did last week, I was busy working on the new incel fragrance, Lone Scum. CPG, Sam, last week on my 35th birthday, I was accepted to law school. Can I get a shofar to celebrate? All right. Jack from Colorado. God, let Emma get a word in. Emma is not here today. I think I mentioned that several times. Oh, here's the video. Nice. It's on the top of the Washington Post.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. All right. That's pretty good. It's just 8 seconds long. So it's got to be the same thing we had.
I probably want to see it in 4K, though.
4K, it's definitely a much better in that one. That's really nice. It's nice work. As we talk about federal workers who have been summarily terminated, this is NBC 10 Philadelphia's Brian Sheehan is on with a guy named Robert McCabe, a former IRS employee. This clip's a little bit long, but not too bad. Check this out.
Tell me what happened today.
So, I mean, I went in at my normal time. When I arrived there, you know, everybody was in a very downtrodden mood. And when I went to my computer, you know, everybody was having some technical issues. Like none of our computers were really loading up either the programs that we needed to operate or like Teams. My story is the Teams. You know, that's kind of how I figured out that we were getting fired today. Was when I went in, I logged into Teams, and I sent you the photo of what I saw when I went to log in. And that's when I left my cubicle and I went around to everybody else I work with. And I'm like, hey, what's your Teams look like? Some were having trouble. Some were able to log in. It was very, very chaotic. I mean, there was no organization to it at all. And basically we just sat around for the rest of the day. I mean, talk about government efficiency. We literally sat there and did nothing all day long, while we waited for our fate. So again, we got our email saying that we were fired after sitting around all day knowing we were fired. And then we turned in our equipment about an hour or so later, and then we were escorted out of the building.
What do you make of what happened to you and your colleagues today? We hear about 400 employees, including yourself, were laid off.
I mean, it's unfair. I mean, I was unemployed, so I was laid off. I was laid off before this job, and it took me 8 months to apply and go through all the background checks and everything I had to do to get this job. And then 4 months later, now I'm in the same boat I was in before. I don't know how to feel. I'm kind of numb right now. You know, I went out to lunch with one of my buddies after immediately it happened, and you know, what can you do at this point? Aside from reach out to the news organizations, reach out to our senators, reach out to our representatives. I mean, it was an illegal firing. My performance was good. I was I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing. I was even one of those government employees that went every day of the week. I had to report every Monday through Friday, 7 to 3:30. That was my tour duty, and that's what I served. And here I am.
Just to be clear, almost like 6,500, maybe 7,000 IRS agents were fired. Now, the reason why he was fired is because he's considered a probationary, and I don't know what probationary means in the terms of this. Like, it could be 6 months, the first 6 months on your job. Again, if you were promoted within an agency, you are also a probationary hire and you can get fired. The IRS, for every dollar spent at the IRS, $7 is returned. They will screw up IRS direct file. That's going to be a casualty, saving your average person a ton of money. They didn't have to file with TurboTax. They didn't have to file with the HR block. And it's going to screw up, without a doubt, people's tax returns. They're going to be more angry at the IRS. This is not about efficiency. If it was about efficiency, in terms of saving the US dollars, you would add 6,000 IRS agents. And they would be dedicated to auditing people like Elon Musk, billionaires, millionaires who are avoiding taxation.
Right. Because I mean, like the filing services, the private filing services now are tax deductible. So we're essentially paying them to, like H&R Block, to do taxes for people.
When we could be doing this for free.
Yep.
Super easy. Super easy. Super easy. I think with the IRS direct file, I don't think you can do it if you have any 1099 income. It's all W-2. You can do it if it's 1099 interest, but not non-employee compensation. Because Mila and I were going to try and do it. But there it is. And the guy was unemployed for 8 months. It's not easy to find a job. Yeah. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Apparently I'm wrong. When I say it's not easy to find a job after you've been summarily fired, I guess I'm wrong. And who better to know than Sean Hannity, multi-millionaire. Here he is on his radio program trying to justify what's going on with people fired. Now, 30% of the workforce are vets. Personally, I don't think you as a federal worker should be treated any better or worse because you were a vet. But a lot of these people did go through absolute hell in certain situations. And certainly on the right, ostensibly, they care about the vets. Of course they don't. But here is Sean Hannity explaining to his audience why people got to suck it up. You know, I'm sure your landlord or your bank will allow for you to take a couple of weeks or months off of paying them because you're such a good guy. Remember now, these are people, a lot of these people just got promotions. So put yourself in the mindset of somebody who just got promoted. Oh, we've arrived. Honey, we can afford that we can afford those car payments now. We can afford to, we can afford to build that fence in the backyard or whatever it is. And because you were just promoted, you got fired. Or I'm in civil service. I know there's a cap on what I can make, but I know this is a secure job because I go in and I do my job well every day. I got a good review and government work. Again, I'm not going to become a millionaire, but I am doing good for people and I'm doing a good job. So my job's secure. Nope.
Eric is in Wisconsin. Hey, Eric, how are you? Glad you called.
Hey, Sean, thank you so much for all you're doing. We sure appreciate it here in Wisconsin, and we tried to help out this election cycle. So,
well, you helped out big time. You did. Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, Arizona, Nevada, all of you helped. Thank you.
yeah, I just wish we could have got Tammy Baldwin out of there, but it didn't work out too well. So, but
yeah, well, you came close. I mean, unfortunately, you don't win every game you play.
yeah, right. But hey, I just awesome stuff that Doge is doing with Elon Musk, and we sure appreciate it out here. Is we're kind of farmers and taxpayers and all that good stuff. But one thing I'm concerned about.
I'll tell you something.
Moron.
God. We'll get to this in a second. USAID, what the annual budget is. But farmers get a big piece of that, significant piece of it. The taxpayers and farmers in Wisconsin, they're not going to see a single dime of savings, but they're going to see a lot more in terms of costs, because the profit making by corporations who are now not going to have to worry about regulators is going to come at the expense of the consumers, of the citizenry. Continue.
Yeah, that out here is we're kind of farmers and taxpayers and all that good stuff. But one thing I'm concerned about, Sean, a little bit, and I'm concerned the liberal media might run with this, is one of our tenants just recently got laid off from the USDA, and he's disabled vet, multiple deployments overseas, and yeah, the guy is without a job now, and I'm just afraid that stuff like this is going to get out there. And I know you got a soft spot for military and police.
Pause it for 1 second.
EMS
I love the fact that it's his tenant. I'm worried he's not going to be able to pay me for rent. I'm a little concerned that this guy I'm not going to pay me for rent. I wonder if Sean's going to say, well, I know you're going to do your part and not charge him rent for however long it takes him to find a job. Right.
That's the thing about this so-called waste, is so many of these things are providing good jobs, and
government doesn't provide jobs. Government doesn't provide jobs.
Well,
government doesn't create jobs. Isn't that what we were told?
I think that might be, we might want to look back.
Do we have to go all the way back 8 years, 10 years for that? Go ahead.
All those guys, and just a little concerning that we don't let these guys, fall off the wagon here and get neglected, because they've done so much for our country.
Look, I don't like to see anybody in a position where they're going to lose their job. In the case of USAID, and obviously your friend, I'm sure, was not a part of this, but there was, tens and tens and tens of billions of dollars just thrown down the drain and stolen from the American.
First off, he doesn't address the USDA, which is what the worker was working at. So they just use USAID because it's the low-hanging fruit where everybody thinks that there are tens and tens and tens of billions of dollars of fraud and waste, because it all is going out the door to foreign governments. The USAID budget is $40 billion annually. Of that, a minimum of $2.5 billion goes directly to U.S. farmers. Now, I don't know how much it costs to ship that food, but those are also American companies that are shipping that food. And those farmers have to be paid to grow that, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to survive. This is not about the USDA loans that we've heard, farmers getting screwed over because of it. It's not about SNAP cuts that are coming in the Republican budget. When they complain about U.S. aid, it's like, why would we spend $10 million on Sesame Street in Iraq? Haven't we done enough to those people there? Didn't we blow up their whole civil society? Why would we spend $1 to replace it? Why would we spend any money in Afghanistan? Well, who cares if Ebola is spreading like wildfire in certain parts of Africa? I mean, what could possibly hurt us here in the wake of a pandemic? Why do we care about providing support? We could just ultimately bomb them. Why would we even provide any aid? And then these people in the same breath will be like, but China's our #1 competitor and we must defeat them. What do you think China's doing? But all right, so he focuses on something that has nothing to do with this person, this vet, getting fired from USDA.
People and our children and grandchildren. It's just unfortunate he worked for them. With that
Wait, go back. He didn't work for them. He worked for USDA, but he's going to hear USAID every time because that's just a better story. Go ahead.
Was, tens and tens and tens of billions of dollars just thrown down the drain and stolen from the American people and our children and grandchildren. It's just unfortunate he worked for them. With that said, there are going to be a lot of job openings. A lot of people, for example, retired and took the early retirement and payout. And then there's
Pause it for a second.
going to
they shifted the buyout to early retirement because there is an early retirement program that you can take and that people by and by take with some regularity in the federal government. And now they said, like, you can't get your early retirement unless you sign the buyout thing to make it look like people are taking the buyout. Not that many people have. There's usually 150,000 people who turn over in the government annually. And so far, the number that I've seen floated is 60,000, but that includes the normal attrition. Because you can't do the early retirement thing. Now, I'm sure people are getting nervous, but they're lying. They're having to lie about this. And if you're looking for encouragement and hope, the idea that they're having to lie about this is a good sign. Go ahead.
And took the early retirement and payout. And then there's going to be jobs hopefully created in the energy sector when we blow that out, which I believe the president's going to do as quickly as possible, and other opportunities.
Pause it for a second. What does it mean to blow out the energy sector? We already know that we have been drilling and producing more oil than at any other time in the history of the country. What is the energy? More people going to work at gas stations? What exactly is going to happen? If you blow out the energy sector, was it more people are going to work on oil rigs? Is that what he's talking about? This disabled vet is going to go work on an oil rig? Is that what he's talking about? I mean, what happens when the energy sector, this is going to be offset, incidentally, by all the cuts to like solar and wind power and people who've been working in those industries. I mean, you understand that we're weeks away from looking at a number. Every federal worker you cut, every federal dollar you cut, every federal grant you cut causes in the private sector this many people to lose their jobs and this many people to lose money. If they're successful at what they want to do, aside from leaving Americans less safe, they are going to also leave them poorer. And then hopefully, if they're lucky, they'll be able to say, oh, but we're going to give you a tax cut. And of course, most of that money is going to rich people. Go ahead.
That out, which I believe the president's going to do as quickly as possible, and other opportunities we all have to think of the what if you lose your job. Everybody has to have that in the back of their head. My entire career, I assumed I'd be fired any day.
Pause it for a second.
And
Now, if Hannity had been fired 15, 20 years ago, he could live off his millions and millions of dollars he already made.
So efficient.
And here's a taste of Republican leadership. Always have anxiety about your job. Always. Always. That's the way we should live. Anxiety. Are we going to be able to pay for our kids? That's why healthcare, bad idea. Cuts down on worker anxiety. This is him being sympathetic now. Remember, we don't want the liberal media to make something out of this vet. Go ahead.
in the back of their head. My entire career, I assumed I'd be fired any day. And with the, but smart, innovative, hardworking people will always be in demand. Always. And it sounds like I'm describing your friend. And I would just urge that person, do not get discouraged. And I don't know if he's getting the buyout.
Sean, why don't you hire him?
Well, I mean, I'm sure he's smart and innovative in this and that. Like, multiple tours, disabled vet. I mean, this is a guy who wants to get out there and be an entrepreneur, I bet.
He just accidentally got hired by the government.
Yeah.
Or not getting the buyout, I'm not sure. If he is, that would mean he has until October 1. He will get paid until then. That gives him time, and that gives him time, to find a job that he's going to, thrive in and be successful at and be happy and secure again. And however, to continue to spend tens of billions of dollars on wokeism, transgenderism, DEI, and the Green New Deal abroad as the country veers off into bankruptcy is not an alternative. It's not an option for us. And you can't do this to the American taxpayer either. And he's just caught up in that, unfortunately for him. There are good people that are going to be, hurt because the people that have done this to the country have put them in vulnerable positions. It's really not Donald Trump that put them in the vulnerable position. It's the people that wasted all this money that put them in the vulnerable position, in my mind.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's tough to see, and especially for veterans that have done so much. We got.
You know what? But there will be other opportunities that are now going to emerge in a new economy, and make sure that he makes available to him that I would have go and get that government payout till October 1. That buys him time. And you know what I say to people that are out of work all the time? I say,
I mean, obviously, like he's just desperately hoping that this guy took the buyout, and of course, there is no budget line item for the budget for the buyout. That incidentally, that's a fictional buyout at this point. There is no money available for a buyout. It doesn't exist. It's in no budget. But they have to lie. They have to lie because they realize how bad this sounds. The guy calls in, I'm afraid the liberal media is going to talk about this. I'm afraid this liberal media is going to talk about this real person who's going through this real thing.
How we're purging veterans from the civil service.
And, he's my tenant, which means that I could be out some money. Right. So this is really serious.
That's so perfect that he's a landlord.
Yep.
I do like how Hannity both accidentally reframed him, the USDA employee, as a USAID worker, and also reframed this guy as this guy's friend, not his tenant.
Yep.
But hey, a new economy coming, folks.
Hey, the new energy blowout, whatever that means. New economy.
Folks, if we have time, call into Hannity and tell us about your call if you make it on.
Exactly. Here is Brian Kilmeade on Fox and Friends this morning. And they're all like running cover now for this. because there are people at town halls going in going like, hey, man, what's going on here? Now, let's be clear. The people who are showing up, they voted for Trump. That IRS agent, he voted for Trump. That doesn't mean that they were necessarily MAGA. He said that, well, I thought this guy was a business guy and I thought he would come in and do things efficiently. I mean, this sort of mythology around Donald Trump. He's a business guy. He's going to do things efficiently. I didn't think he would just willy-nilly cut things. Well, here's the thing is that, like, we are uneducated as a country as to what it means to be a billionaire. It means, A, they don't pay taxes. Everything they do is structured to avoid paying taxes. His Trump Foundation is structured to avoid paying taxes. They don't care about the IRS. Inefficiency? Trump just ordered $200 million, I think it was, to DHS to make videos thanking him for stopping immigrants from coming into the country. That doesn't seem to be terribly efficient. But now that when they see the implications of what happens when you cut willy-nilly, and we haven't even seen the implications of it. We're just seeing the first round of like the direct implications on workers. We haven't even seen the knock-on effects. And hopefully, Democratic politicians and others will draw the connection between you fire someone at the USDA and SNAP benefits are late. You fire somebody at the USDA and, hey, wait a second. Why are we having problems with our food supply? You fire someone at the USDA and maybe like, how did this bird flu get so out of hand? But in the meantime, what they're doing is they're just bailing water, and they're having to lie. And like I say, that's a good sign. They've run out of actual, like, there's no ideology here. MAGA just loves Donald Trump. There are people who voted for Donald Trump because they thought they were getting something slightly different, an efficient businessman, or getting rid of all the wokeism. And people wake up and they're like, is the wokeism gone yet? It is? How come it's raining? Like, isn't this supposed to affect the weather?
And almost every agency wants them to come in. So go ahead and gut Treasury. Because you know what helps? Because cabinet secretary's got certain responsibilities and the president's got to get elected and people. But when you have someone from the outside come in and make some tough cuts, you could say, I don't have my hands in that. The blowback they're getting in some of these town halls is real. I'm sure there's some people in there that voted for Trump and said, I walked into work and I lost my job. But that's going to be one of the casualties of having to take a $2.7 million federal workforce and knock it down to maybe half of that. So I think we got a heads up on it. As I think the president would do himself a favor, and the Treasury Secretary especially, just saying, hey, we have a $7 trillion budget. We only make $5.9 trillion. The revenue gap is $2 trillion. This is part of closing that gap, is lessening the responsibility. It's not punitive.
Okay, first off, he starts off by saying, well, at least we can bring in Musk and pretend like it's his fault. They can bring in a consultant. And this, again, also, Democrats should be out there, get rid of the word MAGA. There's no MAGA Republicans. There's Republicans. Donald Trump is a Republican president. Musk is working for a Republican administration. This is what Republicans do. This is 15 years ago. I sat on a stage. I got invited to that Aspen Idea Festival or something once in my life with Janine. And it was some game show or talk show that we were supposed to do. That's sort of supposed to be somewhat fun. And so they had us interview Grover Norquist, and it was supposed to be fun. And Grover Norquist was the head of an organization. I don't even know if it exists anymore. Taxpayers for America, fairness, bullshit, whatever it was. And they were the prototype Tea Party. It was Americans for Tax Reform, and they ran Toomey, I think it was, in Philadelphia, who we now think of as like, oh, he's an old style Republican. No, he was a lunatic. And I remember interviewing, and maybe this was in like 2010, because I feel like I talked about it on this show. We're talking to Grover Norquist, and we're trying to keep it light because it's supposed to be fun. And he immediately launches in about federal workers and all the benefits they get and how unfair that is for other workers. And I was like, well, maybe we should give those to other workers. And their project to demonize federal workers was in full swing 15 years ago, and probably before then. The idea, I mean, you go back to what was it, 2008, where, they're talking about maybe before this, cutting the Department of Education, getting rid of government agencies, getting rid of the IRS, cutting federal workers. Clinton capitulated to it by setting up a committee, and it took, of course, they studied it for 8 months and ended up cutting, a small percentage of the workforce. But they studied it at least. But it was garbage then too. Our federal workforce, relative to our population, has been static for 40 years. If they're concerned about the deficit or the debt, then why are they going to promote a $4.5 trillion tax cut? Why would you cut revenue if you're concerned about this? Because they're not. They're not concerned about the deficit.
And all the people they represent,
they're not concerned about the debt.
have so much money. Like it's so absurd.
They don't care about those things. They don't. They're going to try and vote on a bill tomorrow, I think, that's going to cut like $800 billion of Medicaid, among other things. And Trump gives away the game. Well, we're not going to touch Medicaid, except for all the illegal immigrants that are taking Medicaid and all the DEI and wokeness and transgender stuff. And that's going to be $800 billion. You're an idiot. Well, you also may just be ignorant. But it really is, there's two classes of people who believe Donald Trump when he says, three classes of people when he says, we're not going to touch Medicaid. One is somebody who just doesn't follow these things. Two is someone who hasn't gone back to the last time he was president in his attempts to cut things then. And three, one who's just being willfully ignorant or lying. Maybe that's four. They don't care about the deficit or the debt. Because for every one of these agencies that gets cut, dollar for dollar, it probably puts, it is a transfer of wealth from U.S. citizens into the pockets of shareholders of corporations. They don't care about USAID. They care about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They don't care about the IRS. The rest of them, they actually just genuinely care about. But that's why you bring up any agency, they're going to talk about USAID. They're just getting rid of the wokeness. Here is a C-SPAN caller from West Virginia calling in on Friday. Like I say, when you cut government agencies, what you are doing is you are redistributing money from the citizenry and society at large into corporate coffers because you're cutting regulations, you're cutting things and regulators who are specifically there to curb corporate profits, to curb corporations from offloading their costs onto American citizens, consumers, taxpayers, and privatizing those profits.
Yes, ma'am. I'm calling from West Virginia, and which was a red state for Donald Trump, and they have a place called down here Public Debt, and a lot of my neighbors were voting for Trump. They walking around scared, crying, nervous, and they were forever Trumpers. But on a personal note, I'm a diabetic and I'm on Medicare, and when Joe Biden was in there, my insulin was $6 for a 28-day supply. I just went to CVS to get my new supply. It went back up to $80, they said, because the American Recovery Act was canceled. So it went from $6 to $80. So I don't know if anybody else out there on Medicare. And
the subsidies are gone. Subsidies are gone. They're rescinding all sorts of stuff.
It's not efficient to have people get insulin for cheap.
I don't know if. I mean, I'm surprised that guy feels feeling that so quickly, but that's happening. And we're going to see that across the board. I mean, people are going to get kicked off of the ACA. They're going to roll back subsidies there. We're going to see a lot going on.
The only challenge is emphasizing it all, like all the young women who have to go across state lines for abortion care.
It's going to be hard to choose like what thing. There's going to be so much that is going to impact people on a material basis that they don't realize is not a function of government incompetence, but a policy decision made by the Trump administration. But does it make a difference when people come out and speak? Here is, let's do a couple of clips of these. California representative, and this is why tomorrow should be fun to watch and see if they even bring a bill to the floor. Because California, New York Republicans are going to be nervous. The more you get this information out there about what they want to do, the cuts that they want to implement, the better. Here is Jay Obernolte, Republican, California, 23rd District. Town Hall in Yucca Valley.
How do you feel about a unelected, non-confirmed... of our nation.
Yes! Yes!
Great question, and I'm glad you asked it. Okay? And I am very glad someone is looking at all of the waste.
There you go. Here is Representative Stephanie Bice, Republican in Oklahoma's 5th. This is a telephone town hall. Again, asked about Elon Musk. I mean, Elon Musk is working for a Republican administration. Elon Musk is a Republican, the biggest Republican donor. And Republican lawmakers are not doing anything about it. They are all involved in this. This is a Republican project. Here's an excerpt from that call.
I'm a registered Republican voter and retired active Army officer. How can you tell me that Doge, with some college whiz kids from a computer terminal in Washington, D.C., without even getting out into the field, after about a week or maybe two, has determined that it's okay to cut veterans' benefits?
I think a couple things. Let me give you an example. Did you know that the VA was in charge of payments for illegals for housing? Basically, the VA.
No, I'd like for you to send me. Could you send me that reference so I could research that? Because no, I'm not aware of that. And I would tell you that that's a red herring, a false flag. If you're throwing that kind of political stuff up, trying to cut veterans' benefits, that's very alarming to me.
Of course. I'm surprised. I mean, I got to give her credit, though. She didn't, somehow she got through that answer without saying transgender or DEI. So, I mean, credit where credit's due. She didn't hit the trifecta. She only did the illegal immigrant thing. That, of course, the VA is paying for all these illegal immigrants. Incidentally, we have a lot of undocumented immigrants who have served in the U.S. military. We may even had undocumented immigrants who are transgender served in the U.S. military, who may have subscribed to wokeism. Here is Wisconsin Representative Scott Fitzgerald. After praising Elon's efforts for the fake, it is fake. You know it's fake, right? You know there's no waste in, you don't assess. Where do you work where you have thousands of employees where you would be okay with a consultant walking in and in a day, boom, 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 you're fired? Well, like, where do you work where you would think like, oh, okay.
What kind of person accepts that?
No one. There's not a single person who listens to my voice, who works in any type of enterprise where, the McKinsey consultant comes in and within 36 hours is already firing half the workforce. Anybody who got a promotion, this is where we're going to start. Did you get anybody here who's been recently promoted? Raise your hands. Okay, you're all fired. That's where we're starting. Goodbye.
And it was interns from McKinsey too, not even like the head guy.
Nope. This guy's just whiz kid out of high school. You cannot believe the algorithms he can create.
He's the most racist guy at McKinsey.
Here's the algorithm. Have you been hired recently? Maybe because you're headed into a new area and you need people with a different expertise. And have you been promoted recently? You're all fired. That's the algorithm. Then we get on to the next level of cuts. Who in their right mind would say that's efficient? You're being snowed. Play this.
When will you stand up to them and say that is enough?
The end result of the fraud and abuse that has been discovered already.
Yep, absolutely no proof. Hey, you know what happens when there's fraud? People should go to jail.
Yep.
Or like the great senator from Florida, Rick Scott, who pled the fifth. I think it was like 53 times when he was talking about
on the case.
His company's Medicaid fraud. Where are the cases?
That's the thing, is like, go to these things like, what's the point of view, by the way? Sitting on your ass watching a billionaire do all this supposedly efficient stuff. Like, why should we even vote for representatives anymore?
That's Representative Scott Fitzgerald in Wisconsin, right? This is, do we do Glenn Grantham? Here's Glenn Grotham. He is also a Republican from Wisconsin. Go ahead.
President Trump has issued a lot of executive orders. I think by and large this is moving very quickly compared to other administrations, and I think across the board he's done some very good things. I think he's gotten rid of birthright citizenship.
Pause it. Just in case you were wondering, he has not gotten rid of birthright citizenship. It's in the Constitution, incidentally.
It would require you guys to do some work, actually. Not that we want to see that work done, obviously.
He wrote a letter saying, I'd like to do this. Hey, guys, also, did I tell you that I did cold fusion? It's right here. I wrote the letter. I did cold fusion. I'm going to be a millionaire. Go ahead.
He's gotten rid of birthright citizenship.
Illegal as hell.
So there it is. I mean, it's helpful. People across the country, organizations, are organizing people to go to these meetings. I think some of it is via organization. I think some of it is just like people are showing up going like, what the F?
Yep.
But it's important. It's effective because, and I wish we saw the Democratic leadership do more of this. They're just waiting. Yep. You heard like James Carvell on some show the other day was like, you're going to see his numbers drop. Democrats just sit back and wait and do nothing. They should be taking a metal chain, shackling it around Donald Trump's leg, and then tying it to every single Republican lawmaker in the country. Yep. No one, not a single Republican lawmaker, cabinet person should be in any way anything but directly tied to Donald Trump and Elon Musk. They are all the same. The agenda has always been the same. The Republican Party has had this agenda. They have wanted to cut Social Security for 90 years. They wanted to cut Medicare from the day that it was done. They want to cut Medicaid. They want to block grant it. They wanted to attack and demonize federal workers. They want to get rid of unions. They want to get rid of all financial regulations. They want to roll back any type of regulations on food safety. This has been the Republican agenda forever. It's just the only difference now is that they've been able to repackage it after moral majority and after it was, Americans for Tax Reform, and then after it was the Tea Party, and now they finally settled on MAGA. And the Democrats took the damn bait the whole time. These extremist MAGA 14 different qualifiers. And then all of a sudden they look like, these are real rebels. They're not like Republicans. They are Republicans. This is what Republicans do. This is what conservatives do. Conservatives have had this agenda for decades. Decades. 10 years ago, this week, Steve Bannon was at CPAC saying, our job is to destroy the administrative state. This is what they do. This is what Republicans do. Meanwhile, I don't know much about the military, other than we spend ungodly amounts on it for unclear reasons. I do know that if I was going to look for fraud and waste and abuse, I would probably start with our defense budget, which is larger than, which is twice the size of the rest of the world's defense budgets combined. I don't think that's Pete Hegseth's agenda when firing all the generals. I think that is, he's doing a woke purge. And let's be clear, what he's doing is they are making sure that anybody they hire in these positions are not going to talk back to Trump. Because last time they had a problem with the independence of the military, or at least the idea that the military had taken a pledge, a vow to support the Constitution as opposed to Trump. In addition to firing the top generals, they fired the top military lawyers of the Marines, the Army, and the Navy, I think it was, or the Air Force. 3 of the 4 branches of the service. Maybe it was the Air Force, Navy, and Army. And I know that people are like, why would they fire the lawyers? These are the people who advise the military, like, what does the Constitution say about this? What you should be, what is your legal obligation to follow what may be an illegal order? And Pete Hegseth says, well, that's not why we fired them. And then restates that exact reason.
Branches. For people who may not know, I mean, they give advice to the military about what is lawful and what isn't. Not surprisingly, there's been some backlash to those who are worried about their removal. One Georgetown law professor says this: Trump also firing the Army, Navy, and Air Force JAGs. In some ways, that's even more chilling than firing the 4 stars. It's what you do when you're planning to break the law. You get rid of any lawyers who might try to slow you down. Your response to her?
I don't know who Rosa is and what her hyperbole is all about.
Pause it for a second. Pause it for a second. Let's just go back. You get Rosa back up on the screen there. This is her hyperbole. In some ways, that's even more chilling than firing the 4 stars. It's what you do when you're planning to break the law. You get rid of any lawyers who might try to slow you down. I don't know who she is or what that hyperbole is about. Let me restate what she says in my non-hyperbole way.
Break the law, you get rid of any lawyers who might try to slow you down. Your response to her?
I don't know who Rosa is and what her hyperbole is all about. Ultimately, we want lawyers who give sound constitutional advice and don't exist to attempt to be roadblocks to anything, anything that happens in their spots. What we know about these people.
Wait.
In their spots?
In their spots? They don't want to be roadblock. Wait, so she said hyperbole is when you say, when you're about to break the law and they tell you to slow down. And he says, we don't want them to be obstacles.
In their spots. Is their spots constitutionality?
Let's go back just a little bit. In their spots, in the legal spot.
I think he realizes that.
Oh, yeah, no, he realizes, like, wait a second. That was the reason why we fired them. I'm not supposed to say that. She nailed it.
Who might try to slow you down. Your response to her?
I don't know who Rosa is and what her hyperbole is all about. Ultimately, we want lawyers who give sound constitutional advice and don't exist to attempt to be roadblocks to anything, anything that happens in their spots. What we know about these TJAGs inside the military, traditionally they've been elected by each other or chosen by each other, which is exactly how it works often with the chairman as well. Small group of insulated officers who perpetuate the status quo. Well, guess what? Status quo hasn't worked very well at the Pentagon. It's time for fresh blood. So we're going to open
branches.
So we're going to get rid of the people who are in charge of telling us whether we broke the law. You know, another way for status quo is also like the legal system or the Constitution. That's been status quo. Yeah. Now, listen, I think we all agree that as Secretary of Defense, you have the authority to fire generals based upon their skill sets and their aptitude and whatnot. And put up this post from Atrios. Let's just see the New York Times. I just zoom in on the New York Times part of it.
Okay.
So just make sure we cut that out.
Yep.
And this is how the New York Times reported the firing of General Brown, the Joint Chiefs of Staff head. Mr. Hegseth has previously said General Brown should be fired because of his woke focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in the military. First of all, you've got the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Mr. Hegseth said at an appearance on the Sean Ryan show in November. Sean Ryan's not one of those war criminals, is he? No. No, he's a different guy. In November, he added that any general involved with DEI efforts should be fired. Either you're for war fighting, and that's it. He said, that's the only litmus test we care about. You know, as the New York Times writes that, in response to Hegseth's firing of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Brown, it sounds not with something that I would agree with. I find it hard to believe that this woke stuff is really taking over that much. Yeah. But I understand that's their, you know, it's unreasonable, but it's reasonable, if you know what I mean. Let's scroll down and see how the AP wrote up this. Again, hat tip to Duncan Black over at Eschaton, or Atrios, I should say. Atrios over at Eschaton. Here's how the AP talks about this. Interesting that none of this stuff made it into the New York Times article.
The New York Times headline or slogan is "All the news that's fit to print." So this is what isn't fit.
What isn't fit to print is Hegseth had previously taken aim at Brown. Oh, okay. This is from the podcast, the same podcast. First of all, you got to fire. You got to fire the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. He said flatly in a podcast in November. Oh, that must be the Sean Ryan show that the Times alerted us to. Okay. And in one of his books, this must be, they're talking about, what do you call it? Pete Hegseth's book. Well, I mean.
Blurbed by Tulsi, I think.
Yeah. I mean, but how would you'd have to read it. In one of his books, he questioned whether Brown got the job because he was black. Huh. Was it because of his skin color or his skill? We'll never know, but always doubt, which on its face seems unfair to CQ. But since he has made the race card one of his biggest calling cards, it doesn't really much matter, Hegseth wrote. It is a weird context to give. To take what he says about the Joint Chiefs of Staff in his book and and compare it to what he said in November on a podcast, and to see how those two things meld together. I don't know. That gives just like way too much context. Like, is it right to present what someone wrote about somebody that he acted upon in that way? Like the AP did? They're rogue, man. They're totally rogue. Oh, I get it. Because they're still so woke that they're calling it the Gulf of Mexico. Exactly. I mean, the New York, like, what is the justification? The New York Times is supposed to give you the context of this guy being fired. And the presumption is you hear Hegseth's, status quo is over. The Pentagon has done things wrong. I'm firing him. It's my prerogative. That's what he says on the news program the day after he fires them. Also, he has a little bit of trouble when he's got to be talking about, we've got the lawyers gotten rid of too. And then you go back all the way to November to quote him on a podcast where he's talking about why he doesn't want. Well, if that makes sense, if it makes sense to provide that context, why would you leave out the context of Hegseth's book, where he basically says the dude only got to be hired as a Joint Chiefs of Staff because he's a black guy?
And presumably wonders that about any black person in the military.
There's no way to know. The only way to make sure that a black guy is not hired because he's black is to not hire him for those jobs.
Get the white guys with
Just get
crusade
the
tattoos in.
normal people in. The people who don't have a race. The people who are just normal. They're not, they're not this one thing or the other thing. They're just normal and deserving and meritorious. And not going to be obstacles
in their spots.
In their spots.
Yeah, that's the problem I have with the military is there was too many obstacles in terms of legality that they were being caught up by.
All right. We don't have much time, but I want to play this clip because I want to give credit where credit's due. We'll have time to do more of this stuff tomorrow, but so Trump is at a National Governors Association meeting, and he's bragging about all the work he's done, gotten rid of all the trans people, the 12 trans women who were playing sports throughout the nation in high school level. And Governor Janet Mills is there. First of all, Susan Collins, this has to be the time where she goes. This whole idea, you got to get somebody in there who's actually going to be aggressive and point out how much of a liar Susan Collins is. Whenever you know Susan Collins is going to vote against a nominee, it means they have enough votes to pass a nominee. That's the tell. When Susan Collins comes out and says, I'm voting against something, that is your first indication the Republicans have enough votes to pass it. Always. Here's Trump at this National Governors Association, and good for Janet Mills. She's not going to take his crap. And he gets pissed. He doesn't like anybody talking back to him, and particularly one of the non-male persuasion.
The NCAA has complied immediately, by the way. That's good. But I understand Maine. Is Maine here, the governor of Maine?
Down here,
Are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with the state and federal law.
Pause it for a second.
well,
Now, Trump is talking about complying with their new edict on Title IX and banning trans girls from participating in girl sports.
Are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with the state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good. I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor, because I don't think you'll be in elected politics. Every state, the NCAA.
It's going to be interesting to see.
That's going to do good wonders for sports for young girls, is just cutting off all federal funding.
Well, it's to save the girls.
Yeah.
It's to save the girls for the how many trans women have played in Maine college sports over the years? Hours after that, barely, the Trump administration, pop this up, launches a civil rights investigation into Maine's transgender student sports participation policy. I don't know who's left there to do any type of investigation. They've already shut down. But apparently they want to show the value of the Education Department's Office for Civil Rights. They launched an investigation into the Maine Department of Education for potentially violating Title IX, the federal education law that bars sex-based discrimination. The Office for Civil Rights, it's such a joke to call it that now, allegations that it continues, this being Maine, to allow male athletes to compete in girls' interscholastic athletics, and it has denied female athletes female-only intimate facilities, thereby violating federal anti-discrimination law. Launching a civil rights investigation is a key step in the process of yanking a school's federal funding. But the bar for being guilty of a civil rights violation is high, and federal government has not used this lever of power in Washington in decades. It'll be interesting.
And it says there, too, letter sent to Maine Education Commissioner notified her that the Office of Civil Rights is launching a probe into 2 schools for allowing a transgender student to compete in girls' sports categories. A. So if I'm understanding correctly, one student.
Yeah.
Literally one student.
That's all it ever is. So it's like a couple.
There it is.
Check their genitals.
I wonder if Susan Collins is going to, what she's going to do.
Yeah, right.
All right, let's read some IMs and we got to get out of here. Dylan, would like to call in to cancel my membership. I don't deserve to be hung up and ridiculed when I'm trying to share my passion for alternative economic systems of value flows with your leftist program. Yet you say you don't see capitalism ending in your lifetime, which is out of blind ignorance. And just like MAGA, I don't want to hold ignorance against you, but really liberal of you and not leftist to dismiss a supporting member.
Oh, is this about the app that somebody
The
was
debate
pitching?
about libertarian anarchism?
Oh yeah, no, they probably were ridiculing you.
I don't. Was I here?
I have no idea what this is referring to.
Listen, as a libertarian and an anarchist, people should know that canceling is self-initiated.
Yeah, I mean, that is rough.
But
combination of
honestly,
words.
the other thing that members should know is that there's really nothing that you can say that gets me angry. Over the course of like 20, 25 minutes, I start getting frustrated because I'm wasting time on the show. The only thing that can get me really angry is when you leverage what we say, your membership, you leverage that and demand something of the show because you're a member. I have too many psychological issues with that. I've gotten fired by too many places because of people thought they were the boss because they were paying me money. I don't react well to that. That is the way that you get fired as a member. So you will not be quitting your membership. I will fire you summarily. So send an email, and you have 2 choices. Send me an email with your email address, and I will fire you. Or I want a letter, 5 bullet points, as to what you did last week to justify your membership. It's one of those 2 things that has to happen. Kowalski from Nebraska. Welcome back, Sam. I have compiled the majority assessment as requested. Emma and Bradley do not use a single curse word. Truly incredible. However, swearing was still an average level given the absolute tenacity of Matt Leck, Aaron Brown, and Brandon Sutton. You might get sponsored by the U.S. Navy at these rates. I would highly recommend not using ChatGPT while on ketamine. You might be making some very weird requests at 2 a.m. I would
Can
imagine
ChatGPT raise your kids for you? Because I know somebody who might need it.
I would imagine the governor of Maine felt a lot like Chamberlain, who led the 20th Maine Regiment in bayonet charge against the slaver army during the second day of the Battle of Gettysburg. Spiritually, the governor of Maine just shouted out, "Fix bayonets." Vermont Ben. The United States voted with Russia and Belarus against the resolution condemning the invasion of Ukraine today on its 3rd anniversary. What are MR's thoughts? That's problematic. I'm not surprised Russia and Belarus voted that way. And I guess to a certain extent, I'm not surprised that the United States did. Can we please hold Russia to the same imperialist, warmongering, belligerent standard that we correctly hold Israel to? We can. It feels like Trump is holding them now to the same standard.
The issue is, like, if you call for a two-state solution, that kind of is, because that is accepting, say, territory taken by conquest for an end of peace.
The situations are obviously different, but I think, you know, Trump is being consistent in that he's now has taken his total disregard for the Palestinians and has imposed that on the Ukrainians as well.
Absolutely.
And to be fair, also, from Ukrainians, they can give me minerals. And Gaza, you can give me land.
And
so
every European country raise your military spending.
Donut Man, Ohio is on its way to the network state. Gerrymandering, Jobs Ohio. Please look into Andrew Arsenal's one drone factory going here with huge subsidies. Dave from Jamaica. I am no military fan, but is their plan to fill military leadership with racist dipshits? Mob meeting. IMR's majority report is not pro-Russia.
Also, that filling up the military with right-wingers, that goes back even. I mean, during the Iraq War, there was issues.
Oh, my God. Particularly the Air Force.
Yeah.
There was that general, I can't remember his name now, who gave like speeches like, our God is better than their God. Ryan from Rochester, is there even enough HR people to process these emails, or is the federal government using AI as HR?
They're going to use AI.
The HR email will have a non-government email address blocked by their firewalls, FYI, so nothing will be sent. Maybe. Trumpflation stickers. You may be right. Ten more. Jab from Virginia. I'm a security job at Job Corps. Maybe I'll send an email. You should. Joe Snuffy. Calling in today to talk about how it appears the right plans to loot the DOD. Tomorrow. We'll take calls tomorrow. Jack from Colorado. God, let Emma get a word in edgewise. Yeah, I already saw that. Solidarity from nowhere. This is out of nowhere, but in a parallel universe where Sam gets the role of Saul Goodman and makes the show a tiny bit worse. Sorry, but not even God in heaven would find a better actor for that role. I know you two are friends, and I hope you're humble enough to agree with this as much as you like to play that role. What?
Did you go out for Better Call Saul?
No.
Oh.
No. No, I thought Odenkirk was great in that role. He's a good actor. Baltimore Live Show. My brother works for the NLRB, and he and his coworkers were thinking of responding to the email with their, I already read that. The grocery list. All right, so 8 more. Nick from Iowa. I've been speaking to my mother about news and whatnot. She says that she wants better news sources. I tried to introduce her to the Majority Report by having her listen to last week's Renters Strike episode because I was so impressed by it. Her response was the show turned off because your purpose is to rile people up. Very disappointing. Any advice in introducing somebody to bigger ideas?
Does she read? Because I think like the American Prospect or the Lever might be good just to substitute for people for someplace to check out the news.
The American Prospect is pretty dry. Yeah. Trillaflop. Sam, I'm on my lunch break, and that Trump AI video made me lose my appetite. Thank you.
We did play that right during lunch.
Muddy Mo, thanks for your coverage. I did my taxes early because I knew the IRS would get fired. Frustrating and angering news about the firings. Company Townie. It's odd to me that vaccines and food safety are on the chopping block, but they're clearly trying to remove any security from middle and lower class people. Do they not know that the Black Plague caused the end of feudalism? Probably not.
Yeah.
It's a good point. Jobby Boonier. James Carvell is a plant. He's a fake Democratic operative who's married to a Republican strategist. His sole true mission, just like Rahm Emanuel, has been pulling Democrats to the right.
Also, check out his house. It's wild.
What is it?
It looks like it's hard to describe. It's very gaudy and colorful. It looks like kind of Bam Margera's house, but instead of in West Virginia, it'd be in New Orleans.
9 to 5. Have you seen the statements from the new EEOC director on her priorities? My priorities will include rooting out unlawful DEI-motivated race and sex discrimination, protecting American workers from anti-American national origin discrimination, defending the biological and binary reality of sex and related rights, including women's rights to single-sex spaces at work, protecting workers from religious bias and harassment, including anti-Semitism, and remedying other areas of recent under-enforcement. Ay, ay, ay. All right, 3 more. Mayor Jess, did you see Jamie on the Luigi doc on HBO? Pretty neat. No, that's awesome.
It is crazy. I think the Luigi's defense attorney made this point, like Eric Adams and folks getting dressed up in makeup to appear in a documentary for somebody who hasn't been tried yet is just so crazy.
Jay Tingle, Hannity's on-air patter is really lifeless. Emma referred to Bradley and Matt as these effers at the end of one broadcast. Thank you for reporting her. Brian from Washington State, USDA sent guidance to the response to OPM is voluntary and no penalty for non-response.
Good.
Somebody's like backtracking on their what do you call it? Ketamine fueled tweets.
It's interesting if it's just like the FBI that can get away with that sort of thing or not.
Doge doo-doo. Sam, USPS, like other federal agencies, add points for vets when you apply and test for jobs. There are lots of vets working for the Postal Service. And the final IM of the day. We don't have a guest on tomorrow, right? All right, we'll have plenty of time for... Chevron. As a Maine resident, I would happily vote for Janet for Senate. She'll do a better job than Susan ever tried to do, though she did make a public statement against our Pine Tree Power Initiative, which was personally a disappointment. That is a drag. All right, folks. Matt, Bradley, great job today. Emma and Abstentia, we'll see you tomorrow. Great job filling in, doing solo work last week. And we will see you tomorrow.